You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. The futures markets can be downright scary. Limit up, limit down. What the heck is RBOB anyway? Are they going to dump a truckload of soybeans on your front lawn if you click the wrong button? Come to think of it, maybe you should just stick to your comfort zone. Or you can break out of it with the Futures Rundown. The Futures Rundown is here to help you make sense of these scary markets. We'll analyze all the top futures trading activity, explore the ins and outs of your favorite products, explain exactly how futures work, and hear from leading experts in the futures markets. We'll even tackle all of your wildest futures trading questions. If it involves futures, then you'll hear about it on the Futures Rundown. The Futures Rundown is brought to you by T4 Futures and Options. Elevate your trading experience with the T4 Futures and Options trading platform. Whether you prefer desktop or mobile applications, T4 delivers low latency and professional-grade functionality for both traders and brokers. Take advantage of theoretical sheets, strategy solver, MBO, advanced charts, and a suite of powerful features to enhance your trading strategy. Visit ctsfutures.com or search for T4 Futures and Options on Google to register and get a free month. And now, it's time to break into the futures markets. It's time for the Futures Rundown.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again. It is Wednesday. Time to roll out the Futures Rundown, see what's going on in the Delta One world, the futures world. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from the network upon which all of you folks are mainlining these days. Remember, if you want to check out more, check out our friends over there at ctsfutures.com to kick the tires and light the fires. And while you're checking things out online, make sure you're checking out the pro over there. Theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to learn more. That'll get you access to the upcoming pro Q&A coming up after this show. I have a feeling we're going to delve into a future or two on that pro Q&A. So if you want to check that out, as well as options oddities, you want to get your name in the hat for the big giveaway coming up at the end of the month, and so much more, theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires, as we see who's joining us on the old Futures Rundown program today. I am pleased to welcome on a newcomer to the program and indeed to the network. He is Raymond Grignon, the business development head over there at Ironbeam. Raymond, welcome to the Futures Rundown program.
A pleasure to be with you guys. Thanks for inviting me.
And Raymond, as we are wont to do with all of our first timers here on the network, why don't you go ahead and give our audience a bit of an overview of your background in the world of futures and derivatives, as well as what it is you folks do at Ironbeam.
Well, I've always been a follower of the markets. That isn't necessarily what my occupational background is. I was recruited to work in the institutional business development field for Ironbeam a little over 2.5 years ago. Received my Series 3 and Series 30 certifications, and then began to work as an associated person with the firm. We've expanded our segregated funds and brought more access to traders worldwide, both foreign and domestic. We have a large space in the retail community, but we're growing also in the institutional department, which is more of where I focus.
I know a lot of the brokers we talk to tend to have certain pockets of liquidity that they specialize in. Maybe it's the ags, maybe it's energy, it's metals or equity or crypto, who knows? Are there certain markets, certain pockets of liquidity that you folks specialize in over there at Ironbeam?
I don't think so. No, I don't know that we would consider ourselves specialists in any one market more than any other. I suppose there are some IBs that position themselves that way as they seek to provide broker-assisted trading. But Ironbeam services all futures traders. So whether it's a futures-based ETF, which is a totally different setup than a retail day trader, we really do service the full spectrum of customers. So no, there isn't. Personally, in my book of business, I watch Bitcoin and Ether quite a bit. Obviously, those moves today and yesterday have caught my eye. I also follow natural gas fairly closely. Mostly, though, that's due to my individual clients' hedging and investing objectives. That's why I watch those markets.
All right. We like to watch all markets, listeners, because it is time to enter the trading pit.
It's time to break down all the action that's lighting up the futures markets this week. What's limit up and what's crashing and burning? Let's find out. It's time to enter the trading pit.
All right, everybody, welcome to the trading pit, the portion of the show where we break down all the activity that's lighting up the futures markets this week, and sometimes we go a little bit farther back. It is getting towards the end of February, but you know what, Raymond, we've been chatting with all of our guests here that are coming on for the first time this year, and just kind of kicking things off by looking back at last year. Last year was kind of a mad year. A lot of things going on. Obviously, the election, a lot of trends in the underlying, a lot of things going on to really drive a lot of action across the futures realm last year. As you look back at the wild year that was 2024, Raymond, what are some of the markets, the products, the trades, or the trends that really stand out and resonate to you, sir?
Oh, just personally, I think the SOFR product is really revolutionizing the hedging space for those that have any type of exposure to interest rate risk. So that's been something that it's been fun to watch. I think it's also been fun to see a lot of the new ETFs that have been launched that are futures based, whether that be by quantified funds or Teocrum. Volatility Shares has some Bitcoin future-based ETFs. I think that's been, the ETF market has been fun to watch from my perspective, given what I do as an institutional business development specialist here at Ironbeam. And then I think recently what natural gas is doing right now is interesting to watch. But I guess that's technically this year. But yeah, last year was fun. I think this year's going to be funner.
You could pick almost any week, and nat gas will be a fun product to look at, it seems like, these days out here. Well, our chat is certainly having a fun time having you join us here today. We've got Nichols in our live chat saying he's excited. He's not familiar with you guys. So to you guys, he's a new futures broker. So he's excited about learning about you. Option God, just welcome Ironbeam. So the folks are excited to have you on the show, Raymond.
Well, excited to be here. I hope that I can offer some help. With respect to being a brokerage, we're not only a brokerage, we have our own front, middle, and back office proprietary software with live P&L. We're a full FCM. So we're a one-stop shop when it comes to futures trading. If you haven't heard about us, give us a call, ask for Raymond. Be happy to talk to you.
All right. Well, we know what's lighting it up to the upside and to the downside this week. But before I get into those charts, Raymond, what is catching your eye in particular in the futures markets this week?
Well, as I just mentioned a few moments ago, what's going on with Bitcoin is very interesting. I think everybody wants to know when the dip's going to end. We've been hovering around 83 for a while. So that's where my attention is. I do a little bit of risk monitoring. So that's where my mind is right now. I can't really think about anything else. I'm watching Bitcoin pretty closely.
Let's get into that a little bit then. In fact, we had our good buddy in the crypto realm, Mr. Boris from Coinbase. He was saying a lot of good things about your firm. So I kind of had a feeling you folks were playing a little bit in the crypto space these days. But it's been an interesting area of the space to watch, particularly on the futures side. Everyone remembers when CME and SIBO launched the Bitcoin futures back, I believe it was in 2017. It was an interesting time. A lot of people thought, okay, here come the listed futures. And previous to that, really spot Bitcoin had been a bit of a roach motel. You could get in, but it was hard to get out. They thought having a listed futures contract would give an exit point to a lot of spot holders. And of course, that was the case. We saw kind of the onset of one of the early crypto winters. Many ebbs and flows since then. Bitcoin has had quite the resurgence post-election, all the way up to 100K. Given some of that back right now, is it fair to say over there at Ironbeam there, Raymond, that you have a large contingent of whether it's crypto futures or options on futures traders out there right now?
Yeah, I think that most firms would give you an affirmative there. It certainly is becoming, the perception of Bitcoin is changing, and you can see that based upon the investor profile, which is what makes a dip like today interesting, because I think there's a lot of people that might been wanting to partake post-election, maybe didn't for whatever reason, and now you have this dip. I think the overall perspective, but that's just, again, this is just an opinion. It's just there's always risk of loss in futures trading. I hope we all understand that, but I think the overall outlook on Bitcoin is optimistic. So this dip is an opportunity for some people to maybe get in when they didn't.
Do a little bit of nibbling. I believe we have a listener question about that a little bit later out there. Really quickly, we've been kind of surprised. We obviously do a show every week talking about the options that are trading over there at CME. And it's been a surprise to us. There's a lot of fanfare around the launch of the futures and subsequently the options over there at CME. For whatever reason, they haven't really lit the world on fire from an overall volume perspective. What are your thoughts on why some of the listed crypto derivatives still haven't caught fire while we've got things like IBIT launching and just lighting the world on fire, Raymond?
I can't really, it's hard. I'm not going to try to give an answer to something I don't really have an opinion on. I don't know why. I would be just as interested in answering that question. So next question would be what I would say, 'cause I don't have too much of an opinion on that.
It's a fascinating topic. We've debated. I've heard a lot of complaints about margin and other things. There is that core of the crypto universe as well that just doesn't like essentially cleared product. But to those people, I would put Exhibit A, IBIT, lighting the world on fire from an underlying and from an options perspective, doing 400,000+ contracts a day on the options side. So a lot to pay attention to. Speaking of pay attention, let's see what's lighting it up to the upside and to the downside this week. Let's start, since we're talking crypto. I think you know where we're going to start, listeners. To the red, to the downside we go. Number 5, this may come as welcome news to all you Starbucks fans out there. Coffee finally giving up some of the ridiculous upside it's been running on of late. The May future down over 9, about 9.2% this week. Number 4, we have our old pal, the Bitcoin futures over there at CME. What were we just talking about? The micro and the big futures off 10.1 and 10.3% respectively. Number 3, we have cocoa to the downside off 11.3%. And then number 2, number 1, kind of a cheat. Once again, our old pal Ether off 12.6%. Yeah, this won't come as welcome news to any of you ETH holders out there. I know a lot of you were hoping for a year where ETH might make up some of its underperformance compared to Bitcoin and Solana. I suppose the only solace you have is that they're all selling off right now. Solana's given up over $100 from its high. Bitcoin obviously down well shy of 100K at about 83,000 right now. And obviously ETH has been one of our larger year-to-date losers as well. We'll get to all that fun in a second. Do you do a lot of ETH activity over there at Ironbeam? And any other of our losers of this week catching your eye this week, Raymond?
We do quite a bit of Ether, yes. It's probably second only to Bitcoin. And yeah, the volatility on that is going to be more than Bitcoin typically, from what I've seen, and we're seeing that currently. But yeah, so we're involved in both of those markets with crypto, and I do think what you mentioned on coffee is interesting. It did seem to just be forever climbing, and I think there is some correction that we're seeing there as well.
There you go, Raymond. We can all finally afford a latte again after this.
Exactly.
You don't have to take out a second mortgage to get your cappuccino in the morning. My goodness, coffee has been on the rampage, listeners. Let's keep going. Let's see what's rampaging to the upside this week, shall we, listeners? We're starting off number 5 in the rates. It's the 30-year, up 2.94% this week. Keeping it in the rates for number 4, it's the Ultra T-Bond, up a little over 4%. Number 3 to the world of lumber. The May contract up 6.28%. Lumber, if you go back to the wild days of the pandemic, listeners, 2020, 2021, everyone was talking about a lot of things. There was meme stocks going on. All things were going on that were really volatile out there, crypto, everything else. The one thing no one was talking about, except for us on our TWIFO show, was lumber. Dead trees, probably the most volatile asset in the world for that couple of year period over there, has since quieted down, but dead trees were blowing the doors off just about anything else from a vol perspective a few years back. Maybe lumber moving back a little bit again, up 6.25%. Number 2, we have the VIX futures, the March VIX future. We've been selling off a little bit in the broad equity, so no surprise to seeing that near portion of the VIX futures term structure getting a bit of a lift, up 6.33%. I know, for all you hardcore vol traders, all the folks who listen to our Vol Views show, percent of a percent in vol, it's anathema to you. I know, I get it. Just make your peace with it. I did it a long time ago. And then the number 1 green light side mover this week, listeners, is oats. The May contract up 6.53%. Raymond, anything catching your eye in the light side, the green upside movers this week?
Not necessarily. You mentioned just a moment ago, one of them. I was looking through your document here. What did you say was number 3 again? Lumber. You were mentioning lumber. Yes. Lumber. It's interesting that you mentioned. I wanted to mention this. We actually have special risk settings that are still in place because of some of those lumber volatility that you're talking about. So yeah, lumber was a dangerous asset for some time.
Yeah, no one talks about it. Everyone talks about meme stocks and crypto back in 2020, but no one talks about dead trees, yet they were lighting the world on fire.
Yeah, they were. It was scary from a risk standpoint. A lot of people were liquidated on dead trees. So that, and I think Bitcoin got people when it first became accessible. People just hadn't anticipated the volatility. So yeah, those are two that there's some restrictions from a risk standpoint because of that volatility years and years ago.
That's funny. Lumber is still restricted. I didn't realize that because it's been not quite dormant, but a lot quieter over the last couple of years.
I'm just speaking from a firm
that's interesting.
Specific point of view. We will enable lumber. It's just something that we take a hard, fast look at.
Yeah, that's another product. It was moving around quite a bit. The futures were doing a lot of volume. For whatever reason, it never caught on from a futures options perspective. It was a mystery to me. It was whipsawing 30% a week. You think that would be a tailor-made for some options volume. For whatever reason, it never materialized. One of the baffling things to me, Raymond. Oats is another one. Oats was pretty wild a few years back as well. Again, does maybe 3 options contracts a week. So I don't know. I don't know what makes a futures options product these days, Raymond, but clearly lumber and oats ain't it, even though they are lighting it up in the green direction this week. Let's see what's lighting it up from an overall volume perspective this week. Let's just tell you what, we'll expand it. We'll not just a top 10, we'll do a top 15 because we like you folks. Number 15, kicking things off in the land of the precious. It is the April gold contract, 151,000 contracts on the tape as of a few minutes ago. Number 14, we got Raymond's old buddy, a frequent offender on our TWIFO program. It is Nat Gas, the April contract, 153,000 contracts on the tape. Number 13, we go from metals to energy, now to the world of FX. It's the yen, the March contract, 155,000 contracts on the tape. There, number 12, keeping it in FX. It's the euro, also in March, 198,000 contracts on the tape there. Number 11, to the realm of ags we go. It's the May corn, going out a little bit this time. 213,000 contracts on the tape. Man, we're all over the place. We're only at number 10. To energy we go. It is crude oil, WTI, the April contract, 228,000 contracts lighting it up today. On number 9, our first rates candidate here is the Ultra T-Bond, going out to March, 344,000 contracts on the tape. Number 8, keeping it in the rates, it's the 30-year, also March. I think pretty much everything else is March on the board today, listeners. 30-year, 480, number 8. Number 7, on number 7, we go out to the equities. It is the NASDAQ E-mini, 519,000 contracts on the tape. Number 6, back to rates. It's a 3-month SOFR. Actually, I take it back. Not everything, with the exception of this. SOFR all the way out in December. 515,000 contracts on the tape there. So an active end-of-year contract. Number 5, back to March rates. It is the Ultra 10-year, 604,000 contracts Number 4, it's the 2-year, 783,000. Number 3, it's our old pal, the E-mini, 1.45 million contracts on the tape right now. Number 2, number 1, you could probably guess what they are. Can you guess the order? Number 2, it's the 5-year, 1.55 million. And the big dog, yet again, the 10-year, 1.86 million contracts on the tape. Raymond, any surprises, anything catching your eye in our list of the most active futures lighting it up today, sir?
I think the 3-month SOFR, as I mentioned earlier, I think that's a revolutionary concept, being able to hedge interest rate risks via a futures contract as opposed to traditional swaps. I think that's going to only grow. That's just my opinion again. That catches my eye. I wonder if the reason why it's year end is primarily because of the service that it provides to people with interest rate exposure. Maybe that's why the December contract has so much volume. Other than that, nope. Natural gas, is that low for natural gas?
Yeah, that is surprising. Of course, if you add up the entire complex, it's going to be more. That's just one contract out there in the April contract. But still, yeah, you're right. A little sleepy for a nat gas out there today. Since we're talking nat gas, let's talk really quickly. It is coming up at the end of February. It's always interesting to see what trends are shaping up already in the market for the year. Some products have already had fantastic years, and we're not even done with February. Some products have already had horrible years, and we're not even done with February. So let's see what's going on out here. Let's go to the red. Let's see what's losing the most so far this year. Number 5, listeners, we got one of the EMs. It is uranium, the SEP future, off 10.5%. We've been talking about uranium and lithium for a while out there. Uranium still in our bottom 5 so far for the year, off again 10.5%. On number 4, it's cocoa, the May contract, off about 16.5%. Number 3, out to the land of dairy, it is dry whey, getting a little bit closer to home, the March contract, off 22.1%. Oh, you got number 2, it's your old pal Ether. Man, a rough year for Ether, off 30.58%. So if you were hoping for this was the year of Ether rally ho mode, the flippening, not happening, at least not right now. And our number 1 loser for the year so far, listeners, our old pal Orange Juice, the May contract, off 34.66%. So, Raymond, it's a rough year to be long some uranium, some cocoa, some Ether, some dry whey, or some FCOJ, sir.
Indeed it is, yeah. The OJ catches my eye. I think I have a market watcher on ag that was going to notice that. So that doesn't shock me necessarily. And I think you have to take in mind the recent dip we've had for where the Ether is at right now. I think that, I don't know if this was last week, if that would have been on your year-to-date movers, would it?
It still was.
Okay.
It was off around 20-odd%, I believe.
20? Was it 20?
I'll have to go pull it up to see exactly, because now you made me curious. So I know it was on the list last week, but yeah, it's been a rough.
And Coca, I wouldn't think would have been on there at all last week or a couple weeks ago. That's a recent ad, isn't it?
Last week we had Ether. Yeah, it was around 20%. So I thought Ether was number 2, off 20%. OJ was off about 26.6%. Whey was there, off 14.5%, so that's giving off more. And then uranium.
But was Coca even on the list?
No, it was not. Number 4 was uranium, off 10.3%. Number 5 was lithium, off 9%. So yeah, cocoa breaking into the bottom 5. Not a list you want to be on, Raymond.
No, not a list, unless you're a short.
Yes.
So he, that's interesting. That confirms something on a personal level for me. But yeah, those catch my eye for sure. Interesting markets to trade in.
Yeah, let's keep rolling to the upside, listeners. What's lighting up our tape to the green so far this year? Number 5, we've got off to the ags. It is soybean oil, the May contract, up, 11.85%. Number 4, we just talked about this on TWIFO last week with our buddy Dan. It's high-grade copper, the May contract, up 12.86%. Number 3, this one's been on the list for a while. You can probably guess why, listeners. U.S. Steel, the June contract, up 16.12%. Obviously, a lot of tariff action. We've been talking about Cleveland Cliffs trading on our Options Oddity show. It's been a wild time in the steel market the last few weeks. Number 2, even though it is given up a lot this week, Coffee is still a big winner for the year. May coffee up nearly 18% for the year. And the big dog, our old pal, the Widowmaker, it is April nat gas up 30.39%. A wild time in nat gas right now. Anything catching your eye in the green light side movers this week, Raymond?
Sure, coffee. I mean, I think everybody has a natural eye for the price of coffee, and I think January was just a real interesting month, and then February kept getting interesting. And then it's since corrected a little bit, but still, like you said, on the entire year, it's definitely up. It got really low at the end of 2024, beginning of quarter four, and then just slowly started itching its way to where we have it now. But it would definitely surge at the beginning of the year. Getting in January 1st would have been good.
Yeah, so that's a latte still costing you more than it did at the end of last year, but thankfully after this week, you got a little bit more cash in your pocket. Speaking of you folks, let's see what you folks have on your brain right now. It is time for the Futures Free-for-All.
Ring the bell. It's time to take on all comers in an epic Q&A battle royale. All questions can enter, but none can leave without an answer. It's time for the Futures Free-for-All.
All right, listeners, let's see what you folks have on the brain. If you're hanging out in the live, if you got a question on futures you want to get in here before the end of the show, go ahead. You can sneak it in. You know I like you live folks. Take the time to listen live. You get bumped to the top of the list. Meanwhile, we got a question here from Alan. He says, I'm enjoying the show and I'm getting into energy. Well, welcome. You and a lot of people. You know, I resisted adding futures for a long time on the network, Alan. The story is now infamous, and then they drag me kicking and streaming, drag me into the dark side. You know, I'm glad we did towards the end of last year. It's been a fascinating ride. A lot of great guests come on the network. A lot of great new markets opening up for us to talk about here on the show. And just getting the feedback from you folks. You folks have been loving the show. It's opened a lot of your eyes to the world of futures as well. So I'm glad to see it's been a fun ride for you as well, Alan. He says he's getting into energy. It seems like WTI is featured on the show each week, but a lot of outlets like CNBC like to talk about Brent crude. Which should I be focusing on? Thanks. Yeah, you know, it's an interesting, you're right. WTI, we tend to focus on what lights up the tapes domestically here in the U.S. Obviously, CME has a big presence in WTI. That's the old NYMEX contract that they have taken over. That's where they do the lion's share of their crude oil volume. Brent, more of an ICE product and doesn't really put up domestically as much flow. Brent is also more of a international standard for crude, whereas WTI, obviously it stands for West Texas Intermediate, so it's more of a domestic viewpoint on crude prices. There's no better or worse. We just tend to focus on the one that a lot of our listeners tend to key around, which is domestic crude oil prices, and as a result, domestic crude oil activity for a variety of reasons. If I went outside looking at Brent, it wouldn't be a lot to parse from a volume futures and certainly from an options perspective either out there. So we like to go for the big dog and the one that a lot of our listeners tend to use as a reference point, which is domestic prices, aka WTI. That said, Raymond, where do you fall on the great WTI versus Brent debate? And Alan wants to know, which one should he be focusing on for his trading?
It's going to depend on his investment objectives. I can't really speak to which one is going to be better. Obviously, Brent crude is, more global is kind of the idea. At least that's what I understand. I'm not an expert in that market by any mean, but that would be how I would look at it. If you're coming at your analysis from more of a global standpoint, then maybe Brent would be the way to go there. More domestic than maybe WTI. I'm not sure if I'm the first to, give that insight, but I don't think I'll be the last.
Yeah, if you're watching, let's say you're watching, CNBC on, an OPEC meeting day, you're going to see a lot of quotes for Brent for obvious reasons. That's kind of the international standard, the benchmark that most countries queue around. But for us here, especially for domestic trading volume purposes, you're going to see WTI quoted and traded a lot more. We got Nichols in our live chat saying it's WTI for him. Yeah, it's definitely the more active domestic contract. And again, for a lot of you, your frame of reference is going to be domestic crude oil, not international. So WTI tends to fit the bill. That said, we're agnostic here. If a product's putting up paper, we'll talk about it. So if we see an explosion of activity in Brent, or maybe you folks see some trades out there you'd like to bring to our attention, by all means, we just kind of go where the flow takes us at the end of the day. So you can't go wrong with either, Alan. But yeah, definitely you're a domestic trader. It sounds like you're probably WTI going to be the more reliable and intuitive and just more liquid bet for you. All right, let's keep going out here. This handle is interesting. Manchester 74, maybe an international listener. He says, hello, futures rundown. Well, hello, Mr. or Mrs. Manchester. He says, do you think we'll see more crypto futures this year? I'd particularly be interested in a Solana future. What are the chances, or do you think all the interest is in the ETF? Well, Raymond, as you said, you guys put up a decent amount of crypto futures flow over there. Mr. Manchester over here wants to know, what do you think about more crypto futures coming this year? In particular, he's interested in a Solana future. Do you think we'll see that?
I don't think we will, but I'm not parse to those conversations. I haven't heard anything about that. I think that there's the interest in Bitcoin and Ether is still not at the peak that I think it's going to get to, and so I don't think that you're gonna see a lot of other. But again, this just I don't even know if this is my specialty, so this is just a shooting from the hip feeling. But I'd be interested to know if there's any other word on the market about that. I think in time, everything will be in futures. Just depends on how in demand the contract is. But does that mean that every crypto is going to be having its own futures contract next year? I don't know that it moves that quickly.
Yeah, it's a fascinating question there, Mr. or Mrs. Manchester. Solana certainly been beaten up quite a bit as well. I'm looking at it right now, 133s. That puts it off about 130 handles from its high it set, about a month ago. So it's been quite the drubbing across the board. We were talking about it yesterday on, I think it was on our advisors option program. Some of our pro members were asking about maybe nibbling in Solana. If you were waiting for a sell-off in Solana, then yeah, 130, it's pretty much been cut in half. It was 260, now it's 133. So a 50% discount off the top. You could do worse than that. I will say, I did do a little bit of nibbling myself yesterday. Be careful when you're looking at some of these platforms out there. If you want to stake your Solana, they're pricey. Some of these platforms are charging 35% to stake Solana, Bitcoin, ETH. That means, let's say, if you don't know what you're talking about, listeners, it's equivalent of a dividend stream. It's like your broker saying, you want to collect the dividends on the stock that you own on our platform. We're going to take 35% of that. That's kind of outrageous. So just be careful when you're doing some of these things. The devil's in the detail on these fees. You think you're going to collect all this money staking whatever it is, Solana or Ether, and then there goes a big broker taking a good chunk of that. So something to bear in mind. I would love to see a Solana future. I'm biased. I think more products to trade, the merrier out here. Yeah, I'm kind of with Raymond. I'm not sure if we're going to see it this year or not. There was some hot talk about a month ago when it was 260. I think some of that has cooled for obvious reasons. I just happened to do a scan while Raymond was talking for the latest updates. Looks like BlackRock was making the big push for it. They're kind of quiet about it now. So I don't know if we'll see it anytime soon. It would be nice. Again, more liquid products, the better out here. Whether it's the future or whether it's the ETF, more products for you folks to trade. I think for a lot of you, the ETF would be a great starting point for you. You could trade it in your securities account. You could trade options against it. We've seen IBIT light the world on fire. And hey, how nice would it have been to have a put on Solana from 260 down to 130? So yeah, interesting stuff afoot out there. Great question. Man, I would love to see a future. I just don't know if we're going to see it so far this year. That music means we've come to the end of another sojourn through the world of Delta One fun. But before we go, Raymond, if folks want to check out what you have cooking over there at Ironbeam, where should they go? What should they do?
Ironbeam.com. You can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter. You can call our number 312-765-7239. 312-765-7239. But you can find us on the internet. There's no account minimums to trade with Ironbeam. We service a lot of day traders, but we also are open to institutional hedgers and investors alike.
There you go. Check them out over there, listeners. Ironbeam.com. Whichever way you go, on the futures side. I think it's going to be an interesting time for you. These markets are certainly delivering from an activity, from a volatility perspective out there. That's all you can ask for at the end of the day. But that's not all you can ask for on the content side. It's going to do it for the Futures Rundown. But we'll be back in a little bit, listeners, with another great pro Q&A session with our friend Scott from Prosper Trading Academy, tackling all of your trading questions. I got a feeling we're going to be getting deep into some futures as well. So if you haven't gotten your questions in, get them in now via the live chat, via the members hotline. Should be a fun time. That'll be popping off in a little under an hour here. Of course, if you want to get access to the pro for yourselves, see what all the fun's about, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Back again tomorrow for our typical doubleheader. First, we kick things off with our friends over there at SIBO on the option block. Come back after that to talk some futures options with our friends over there at CME. Friday, we go to the world of volatility with Volatility Views. Who's going to join me on the show? Got to tune in to find out. And then we've got one final show exclusively for you pro friends coming back for options oddities. I will be joined by our buddy, Mr. Matt, the Oracle of New Hampshire himself, to break down. He's always got some interesting trades in his back pocket he'll want to talk about. So stay tuned for that on Options Oddities. Should be a banger. Then we're back again next Monday with the option block all the way through to next Wednesday. Another episode of the Futures Rundown. Stay safe out there, everybody.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.